Divine Truth Events. These are events and presentations by Jesus and Mary. This presentation is part of the General Discussion Series, and it is a question and answer session from people in Philadelphia, presented by Mary Magdalene and Jesus on the 20th of October 2013 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. This is Session 2, Part 2.
Yeah, I understand all that, but when you're hitting an object, it's still, I just don't see how hitting an object causes.
Well, it's not the hitting of the object, it's the desire within you to own and release the emotion. And so some people find that when they have that desire, hitting the object helps them to express that emotion and release it. Other people find just screaming. Sometimes I've just shook in anger to allow it to leave me. But what I'm saying to you is at the moment you have a feeling that anger is justified and that anger is not your responsibility. And that's why hitting an object doesn't help you dissipate the anger. There's a step you have to take before that, which is recognizing that your anger is not justified.
Well, I think I'm aware of that. It's just that.
We can agree to disagree.
All
That's
right,
okay.
Can I just say something about that too? You're totally not aware of it, to be frank. You believe you're aware of it in your mind, which is very, very different to having a soul-based awareness of your true feelings. And this is what I notice a lot of people doing with a lot of their emotions. They don't really have a soul-based awareness of their true feelings about a certain thing. So you've been told or heard that anger is unloving and all of those kind of things, and you think you believe that in your mind, but the reality is you don't. In your soul, you don't believe that. In your soul, you believe your anger is justified, as Mary has pointed out to you, and you don't want to even see that at this point in time. You don't want to even feel about that at this point in time. Can I ask you what you would prefer to do to get rid of your anger, other than beating a pillow or something? What do you want to do?
Well, maybe I was thinking, maybe when she says it was shaking might be, because it feels like it's internally coming from you when it's being released. Maybe that seems more
What
logical.
do you do in your day-to-day life now with your anger?
I guess I hold it in or something.
Well, you're not doing a good job of that because it comes out of you like as a barrage. So, but you attempt to hold it in. I agree. So why do you attempt to hold it in?
Because I really don't want to release it on other people, you know.
So you're afraid of what your anger might do?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. What else can you think of? What do you feel about people who are angry?
Well, I'm not, I guess there's a reason for it.
But what do you feel about them being angry? So when someone's angry with you, what do you feel?
I guess angry at them.
Yep, I agree, you do. But what's the feeling that causes you to be angry with them? What can you identify the feeling?
Well, because they should do a better job of, I guess, not showing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your belief about yourself as well. Your belief about yourself presently is that you need to do a good job holding onto your anger, covering it over, and not showing it to anybody. And that's what you believe a developed person would do. And that belief is preventing you from experiencing anger. So it doesn't matter what method you use at the moment, you won't get to your anger because there's not a willingness inside of you to get to it because there's so much judgment inside of you about it. Does that make sense? And what we're suggesting is what Mary suggested to you just now is once you release the judgment and the fear about your anger, then you'll find you'll get angry fairly more frequently and you'll allow it and then you'll find beating the pillow will help you a lot. Does that make sense?
And one of the big false beliefs I had 6 years ago was that anger was, I judged it also, just like you judge it in yourself. I judged the overt expression of it. But actually, as I mentioned earlier, I was carrying a lot of it in this sort of I felt it was righteous rage about world issues and things like that. But because I never allowed the expression of it and I never owned it as something that wasn't loving, it actually came out of me towards others very strongly. And this is the false belief that I used to have and that you have now, and that is, if I hold it in, it'll do less harm to others. And you have a feeling that if I acknowledge it and let it out, I'll hurt others with it. When actually the reverse is true, in that while we're holding it in, others feel it from us like a big barrage. And when we actually get to this point of deciding, I'm going to own it and release it for myself, and I'm going to feel it, it actually harms less and less people. So it's just something, obviously, that as you've grown up, you've grown to judge anger, or maybe you were really punished for being angry in your childhood. But this false belief, and this also, I feel in you, this feeling that sometimes anger is okay. If people aren't loving, then yeah, I'm okay to get angry with them. Or if I don't get exactly what I want, it's okay to be angry, you know. Just before the break, when we said, no, you need to leave your question till after, there was some anger that came out of you then at that time. So these are the kind of, these beliefs that you have where you feel like it's okay to be angry in that circumstance because this person's not being reasonable or whatever. That's some of the stuff that, if you're going to come to grow towards God and actually grow in love, you'll come to recognise that, anger's never justified. And when you start to work through those false beliefs, then you'll find your anger flows out of you more freely. Okay, thanks.
And remember that anger is always a cover of your addictions and your fears. So in the end, the goal isn't just to experience anger, but rather to get to see what your addictions really are. And so most anger is caused by a desire to control, a desire to get what you want, a desire to get what your addictions are met, a belief inside of you that people should do whatever they should do for you, and things like that. That's what creates the anger in the first place, these false beliefs about love and what love would dictate. So whenever we have any false beliefs about love, usually it creates anger. And most people, I find that difficult to acknowledge and feel, in the sense that they don't realise that what's coming out of them towards other people is a result of their own demands not being met inside of themselves. And often these demands we believe are loving demands, but anytime we have a demand, it's not loving. So if I expect you to treat me lovingly, automatically I'm out of harmony with love. Right? You don't have to. According to God, you don't have to. You've got free will. You're allowed to do anything you want, including being unloving to me, if that's what you want to do. And as soon as I expect you to be loving to me and then get angry when you're not, I am showing one of my own addictions. And it doesn't matter what you did. I'm not saying it's right that you're angry with me. I'm just saying that even if you are angry with me and I get angry in return, I'm not right. Does that make sense? I'm the person who's not examining where I'm out of harmony with love. So a lot of times we have these, what I feel are quite strong justifications, as Mary's pointed out, of using anger. We have the primary reason why we get angry, really, is because we want to control our environment in some way. That's the primary reason. And so every time we get angry, there is a lack of love or a lack of understanding about love. But the key is to not condemn that within yourself, but to acknowledge it and allow its expression so that you can find out what it is that you're afraid of and what addiction you have that's out of harmony with love. Because if you don't allow the expression of the anger emotionally, you won't find out what addiction drives it. You won't find out what fear drives the addiction that drives the anger.
So desire to control is not really an addiction, it's covering an addiction, is that?
That's correct. Yeah, the desire to control is not really an addiction, it's covering a fear. So all of these things, anger and addictions, all cover fears. That's the point of them. That's why we create them. We create them because we want our fears to be assuaged, to go away. We want them to disappear, and we're not prepared to feel them. And so what we do instead of that is we hold on to them, and then we use addictions and then rage or anger, if the addictions are not met, as a tool to control our environment. And that's what, so the whole attempt to control is not an addiction itself, it's an avoidance of fear that causes control. So in a relationship, if you're trying to control your partner, it's avoiding a certain fear. That's why you're trying to control them. If in a work situation, any other driving car, any other situation where you're trying to control other people, it's to avoid fears. There's been whole religious faiths created to avoid fear. So, the whole, for example, most religious faiths are created by a few elect people who are afraid that other people might be immoral if they don't have a religion. So what they do is they create a whole heap of laws, like the Ten Commandments, a whole heap of laws that are all really based around trying or attempting to control a group of other people, because the persons who made the laws are all afraid of what will happen to the other people or themselves if everyone doesn't follow those laws. So you'll be surprised, even in our culture and also in the entire world's history, what's been created just because of trying to avoid a fear. And if you look at religiously, people have gone to war to enforce the commandments that have been created by other people. And why have they done that? Because they feel a huge level of fear that if you don't follow those commandments, God will do something to you. You won't have God's approval, or you won't have God's acceptance, or you'll lose everlasting life, or you'll lose some kind of future existence, or you'll go to hell, or whatever the belief is. And these belief systems have been created most of the time because somebody historically wanted to control, and all of the desire to control comes from their own fears. So we've got whole religious faiths created because of fear. We've got whole political systems created because of fear. We've got whole environmental and systems created because of fear. Economic systems created because of fear, because we're all too afraid and we all don't want to feel fear, so we create all of these addictions and all of these controls in order to get away from fear. So to be frank with the majority of, in everyone's case, fear is your primary enemy in a lot of ways. Now, you can view it as an enemy or view it like I view it. I view it sort of like a friend, because it tells me everything about myself that I've yet to heal. So every time I feel a fear, I go, this is really good. I can feel that fear I've got going on here. Like, let's say it's a fear of somebody's violence. I can feel that fear. What are you prepared to do to avoid somebody's violence? Well, most people are prepared to be violent in return to avoid somebody's violence, or even to be preemptively violent. In other words, do something to the other person before they do something to you. And with myself, I go, okay, I feel this fear, and if I live in it, it's going to be my enemy. But if I feel my fear and work my way through it, it's going to help me, therefore be my friend. It's going to help me grow. And so the key is to start seeing fear as our friend. But for the majority of us, we don't want to feel fear. It's a terrible emotion to feel. Most of us who have ever felt it would say it's probably one of the worst emotions to feel. And so what we have a tendency to do is either overcome it. So a lot of men, what they do is challenge their fears constantly in a desire to overcome their fears. Or we do what a lot of women choose to do, and that is completely deny it altogether and just live in addiction or rage. And that's what we do.
So trying to overcome a fear doesn't really eliminate it.
No, not at all. What you need to do, there's only two things you need to do to feel fear. One, put yourself in a situation where you are afraid. Two, allow yourself to feel the terror itself. Allow yourself to feel it as a feeling. That's the only two things you need to do with fear. It's really simple dealing with fear, but you try doing it. It's really hard when you try doing it, because most people start feeling the fear and then they'd want to do anything other than that, anything. And, people will do all sorts of things just to stay away from fear. They'll even murder to stay away from fear. Why do you think there's around 50 million abortions every year around the world? Because there's 50 million women and men who want to avoid certain fears, and they're willing to murder children to avoid those fears. Like, as a society, we're willing to do so many things just to avoid a fear. And And we only have to do two things. One, place ourselves in a situation where the fear is triggered. Two, allow ourselves to feel the fear. We don't have to take any other action, but most people don't do that. Most people take an action to help their fear go away. Yeah. And we will do, like mankind historically has done terrible things to avoid fear. Terrible things. You know, we're even willing to create an arsenal of nuclear weapons to avoid fear that's so big that if it was all unleashed at one time, it would completely destroy humanity. That's how willing we're able to go to avoid the fear of security, for example, personal security. Like, that's, you know, if you look at all of the things that are created on the earth that we're all... And ironically, it heightens their fear. Now everyone's afraid somebody's going to push the button, sort of thing, you know, like, well, don't create the weapon in the first place. That would surely be the best answer, but unfortunately that's what we do because we're already afraid and we don't want to acknowledge it and we don't want to feel it. And so what we do is we project it and we create circumstances around us that cause our fear, in fact, to increase in most cases. And that's the law of attraction in work. Yeah. But fear is one of the biggest emotions that each person on the planet will have to at some point choose to feel rather than choose to avoid. Yeah. And most of us don't. We choose to avoid, manipulate it, get away from it, do something to maneuver around it. That's what we do with our fear. So all of your anger, pretty much all of your anger, is caused by fear. Now that's a well-recognised psychological fact, actually. Most psychologists would say to you that all of your anger is caused by fear. Of course, they draw the line at some things, like they draw the line at fear of death. That to them is a justified fear, and to me it's not. There's no such thing as death anyway. You know, you live forever, so whether you live here in a physical body or live in a spirit body, it doesn't really matter. You're living forever. So to me, there is no justification of doing something even when you're faced with death. But the average person on the planet who doesn't believe those things will go, no, there are certain times when your fear is justified. And everyone on the planet has some justification of the fear that exists inside of themselves, where they don't want to feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And particularly the justification of fear of death. Most people are very, very afraid of death at all sorts of levels.
Or the death of a loved one.
Yeah, the break, in particular, death usually causes for most people what they perceive as the breakage of a relationship that they want to hold on to of some kind, or a breakage of the relationship with Earth, or a breakage of their ability to use their body in ways that they'd like to use it. They feel that that's not going to be possible. And so they have all sorts of fears that govern why they will prevent death at all costs, prevent their own death, I mean. And they're willing to shoot another person, in other words, kill another person to prevent their own death. And that's fear that causes us to do that. If we're not in a state of fear, we don't feel that way. We would never be willing to shoot another person or harm another person just to prevent our own death. Yeah. But see, these are all things that are justified on the planet at the moment. And so if you allow yourself to feel it, the world around you justifies a certain level of fear. You know, if you read any psychologist manuals or books, you'll find that there's a justification of certain types of fear. When it comes to self-preservation, there's a justification of all sorts of fears. So while psychologists acknowledge that anger is created by the denial of fears and the lack of acceptance of the emotion of fear, they also support that in certain circumstances. And that might be, they support it in the circumstance where your own life is threatened, for example. And so many psychologists, of course, would support war rather than saying that war is unnecessary. And it's all because of fear in the end. Yeah. Fear is the work you're going to have to do at some point. In fact, it's going to be the main work you have to do. Because if you had no fears right now, and you really had a desire for God right now, what would happen? You would already be at one with God. Does that make sense? You'd already be at one with God. If you had no fear and a desire to have received God's love, you would have already received God's love right to the point of at one with God. It's only your fear that prevents it. So it's always fear that you've got to do most work with. And that applies to me as well as yourself. Anyway, sorry about that.
No need to apologise for that, I don't think. All right, I wanted to wrap up the long-winded answer to the question that Dan posed yesterday.